Hey y'all, welcome back to In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen, and today I want to take you along with me as I do a little meal prepping for the week ahead. I'm starting off with some beautiful Instant Pot slow braised lamb, some Jamaican jerk chicken, rice, and this lovely peach cake that didn't quite go to plan. Now, before we start talking about what didn't work, I am going to start off with my braised lamb. Now, these are lamb chops from our sheep, and I'm just browning them in a little bit of vegetable oil in my Instant Pot set on the saute mode. It works very nicely because there are no spatters and everything popping all over the place as it is in the stove. The Instant Pot is so deep that the spatters are contained. Now, we buy our lamb or sheep from a local farmer who raises them. They are beautiful little lambs, and when you pick out your sheep, which you can pick out the sheep that you want, you get to watch her and see how she's walking around, whether she's healthy, well-fed. This particular farmer, we are huge fans of his. He takes excellent care of his lambs. They are his babies. How he does this for a living in terms of putting them as meat on the table, I don't know. But the results, you get this beautiful lamb. So I'm using a combination of lamb chops, lamb stew meat, which this is what this is. And we get ours processed at the butcher's, and we really enjoy it. Now, we don't eat lamb every day, but when we do, this is kind of how I like to cook it. So I've got all my lamb braised and browned off, and there's enough oil left in the pan. I'm adding in one dried ancho chili, and I have here a chipotle, which is a dried smoked jalapeno. I'm just kind of toasting them a little bit in the reserve vegetable oil. By the way, store-bought lamb is very fatty. That is 1 tablespoon of white miso paste that I'm adding. Store-bought lamb is very fatty. The locally pasture-raised lamb is very lean, so you will need some vegetable oil. However, if your lamb comes from the grocery store, you may not need any vegetable, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, anything, because as I say, store-bought lamb, which typically comes from below the equator, can be very fatty. Now, I'm just adding in some herbs, a few spices, not very much compared to what I normally do, because lamb has lots of beautiful flavor, and you really don't want to cloak it with a lot of heavy spices. So I'm not using, this may look like a lot of spice, but compared to the way I spice my beef or chicken, this is actually fairly lean. Now, I love a good slow roast leg of lamb. You could do that with a leg of lamb. You could do it with a shoulder, any of those pieces that take a little longer cooking. So I'm adding the meat back in, and I added in a bit of water, and I'm setting my Instant Pot to cook at high pressure for 25 minutes. This is just to kind of get the meat going because it's going to braise in the oven. But to shave off, say, an hour plus of cooking time, I'm going to jumpstart it in the Instant Pot. Now, while the lamb is braising in the Instant Pot, I am starting with the actual seasoning of the lamb because that is one component. This is the second component that's really going to add the flavor. So I'm sauteing an onion in some olive oil. Not using canola oil this time or avocado oil. I am using olive oil. Saute some onions, add in bay leaf, and then I add in 2 chopped tomatoes. 2 reasons. I would add tomatoes anyway, but we bought tomatoes early in the week from a local farmer. These 2 were hanging out and needed to be used, so I figured it was a good way of using them up. And I'm just once again adding in some more spices. You're building in layers of flavor. In Indian cooking, this is called a masala. And so you're building the masala. Yes, the lamb's got some spices and some things in it, but this is like your second layer of flavor that you're building. So I'm adding in some chili powder. I'm adding in some cumin seeds. I have some crushed red pepper flakes and some oregano and some black pepper. For me, this is all very mild. But again, you can swap the flavors up however you like. If you don't want the chili powder, you can use sumac. You can use coriander. I use garam masala for the meat itself in the braising. So I didn't want to use more coriander. It has coriander. Now for that extra flavor, I'm using some dried chicken bouillon. Yes, I buy the large container because I use a lot of it. And by the way, I just cut a little teeny slip out of the top. And that allows me to pour straight from the container because that is a very large container. I'm adding in some soy sauce as well. That's dark soy. Now this is a barbecue sauce made by a local family. I get my barbecue sauces from them. If you saw my previous video where I showed you my barbecue beef ribs, that is the same barbecue sauce that I'm using here. The reason why I'm adding it is because you want a little bit of sweet to balance out all these spices. You could just add in some straight sugar or honey or maple syrup, but I like the flavor that the barbecue sauce has. Plus, it already got vinegar and spices in it. And once again, you're just building on the flavors. So you let the masala cook for a few minutes. Then I'm adding in 1 tablespoon of flour. You don't need to. As a matter of fact, if you don't want to add flour to this, you can just take the lid off of the meat earlier and let it reduce a little bit more. But I like a nice creamy like sauce. Not creamy, but something with a little bit of feel to it. So I do add in the flour. You can use cornstarch as well if you're gluten-free. 25 minutes is up and the lamb is nice and braised and it looks good. Now you can do this whole thing in the Instant Pot, mind you. You don't need to use the oven. But, look how it just falls apart. She was a very sweet lamb, by the way. If some of you are wondering how we can do this, how we can actually see the live animal before we take it to the butchers and eat it. And no, it is not ethical. It's unethical. As a matter of fact, it's very ethical because we know where our meat is coming from and we know that lamb was in a very good, healthy condition before she goes on our table. So I reserved 2 cups of the braising liquid from the Instant Pot. You don't really need more than that. Anything more than that, it becomes a little bit watery. And I'm just stirring that in after the flour has kind of cooked out a little bit. It's going to get a little thick. And always taste it. Always taste it. You don't need much salt because the chicken bouillon has salt. And the miso, the white miso paste that I use has salt as well. So and white miso is very salty, so you don't need much. Go ahead and add your lamb right on into the pot. Give it a stir. I did leave my dried chilies in here, but you can remove them. You can also take them out and blend them up in a little bit of the braising liquid, and it'll kind of just puree right through the sauce. I didn't because I prefer to just take them out, but they've done their thing. So into the oven she goes, and she's slow baked for about 45 minutes covered with the lid on. Now I'm moving on to my Jamaican chicken. Now here, this is a guajillo chili, and I'm removing the seeds. This is dried. I actually bought these from the farmer's market and dried them myself in my dehydrator. Now I am rehydrating it in some boiling water. Now, technically, I should have done this sooner to let it sit in that hot water and to just completely soften. I did not, but this is a quick way of doing it, and it worked fine. But if you think better than I do, 20 minutes ahead, just let this sit in the boiling water for about 20 minutes. As it stands, I did it for about 5 minutes and it was fine. So you just need a bit of boiling water and bring it up to the boil. Add your dry guajillo chili, put a lid on, turn the heat off, and let it sit. Now, this is my version of a Jamaican jerk chicken. This may not be authentic, so all of you who are from Jamaica or of Jamaican heritage, don't come at me, please. This is the best that I can possibly do. I am not Jamaican. I am not of Jamaican heritage. So, yeah, this is the best that I can do. And technically I should have marinated this, but I didn't. Actually, I have an interesting story about it. So my sister actually married a Jamaican, and we went for dinner at the house one evening. And he had cooked some sort of Jamaican chicken. It was chicken, potatoes, and a real yellow sauce. It was like lots of turmeric, yellow rice, and it was really, really good. He had like dumplings in there with potatoes. It was really good. And my mom was just happily eating. She was like, "Oh, this is so good." She bit into he had left a Scotch bonnet pepper. And she thought it was like a piece of potato or one of the dumplings. And she bit right into it. And my poor mama turned red. Oh, my goodness. And she started going, she was gasping for air. And he was looking like, oh, oops, you must have got a hold of one of those peppers. And she was like, he was from Jamaica, mind you. He was not of Jamaican heritage. He was from Jamaica, and he didn't see anything about it. He was like, oh, yeah, you run into those. And my poor mama was gasping because she had never to eat an entire Scotch bonnet pepper right now, and you're not expecting it. That is a little bit, that's a little heavy. Now, this seasoning that I'm using, it's a Caribbean jerk seasoning. I get it from the health food store, and you get it in bulk, so you get as much as you want. And once again, I'm adding in some soy, dark soy, and a little bit of that barbecue sauce. Now, I found this lime looking very sad and lonely in the vegetable crisper in the refrigerator. And for jerk chicken, you should add some sort of acid. It is typically lime, by the way, so you can use lime. And then I think there is lots of other seasonings. This Caribbean jerk seasoning that I had already have it in it. So it was like a cheap step for me. I didn't need to. It also has salt. So all I needed to do was add in the acids and the sauce that I made, the puree marinade with the onions, the tomatoes, and the garlic. And I added in the dehydrated pepper. Blend that up and pour it over the chicken. Now, the lamb has cooked for 45 minutes. So remove the lid, put it back in the oven, and let it cook a little longer. This step just allows the sauce to get nice and thick, start to reduce a little bit, and it also helps, the longer you braise lamb, especially these cuts that could be a little bit tougher, it gets just a little bit softer. So back into the oven she goes to braise for about an extra 30 minutes. Okay, back to the chicken. Now at this step, you can cover this and let it marinate overnight, 1 hour, 2 hours, however long. I didn't have that amount of time because I actually had an appointment later on that day. So I was kind of rushing it. So I just went and put it straight into the oven. But again, if you have that extra time ahead, you can let this hang out and marinate for a little longer, and it'll be actually even tastier. So I'm not wasting anything. I am pouring all of this over the chicken because this is also the sauce. I'm not making any extra sauce for this chicken. So I put it in the oven and let it bake at 350 for about 45 to 50 minutes, uncovered, by the way. My lamb is out, looking very delicious. And I'm just adding, sprinkling on just a little bit of parsley. Just a little bit. You can also throw some green peas in here too. That would be very delicious, especially in the wintertime. You could turn this into a full stew, adding in some carrots and potatoes and some green peas. That would be very tasty. As a matter of fact, next time I just might do that. But look at how soft and just literally fall off the bone this meat is. Like, it was so soft, I couldn't even get it up on the fork. And it was so tender and so delicious. And I know we all do not have access to pick out our own meat on the hoof and take it to the butcher, because I know growing up we did not. But if you have that opportunity, I highly suggest that you go for it. Now, I did prep some rice, and this is 1 cup of brown basmati rice and a half a cup of regular white rice. I have here 1 Costco size onion that did not come from Costco. And I'm just going to saute the onion in just a little bit of olive oil or avocado oil, canola oil, coconut oil, whatever you prefer. Just saute the onion until it turns a little translucent. And I wash my rice very well. That removes a lot of the excess starch, which help you to have fluffy rice. Now, so many people get so confused about rice. It's a method to cooking rice. It's not just the amount of water that you use, it's how you do it. And this is how I do it. I saute my rice in a little bit of some sort of oil. You can use butter, and just saute it until you see the rice starts to get a little nutty looking. The onion is optional. You don't have to add it. You can leave it plain, but I kind of felt like plain with this beautiful braised lamb. No plain rice, please. And I'm adding in boiling water. Now, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, but I like to drop my liquid down just a little bit. So instead of using 2 cups of water for 1 cup of rice, I use about 2 3/4 cup of water for 1 cup of rice. So turn the heat down to the lowest of the low, put a lid on, and let your rice simmer for 20 minutes. I'm multitasking while I'm talking. Anyway, I did prep some hard-boiled eggs. I love my Instant Pot for hard-boiled eggs because in 4 minutes, you can have all the eggs you want and the shells just slip right off. If you've seen my videos on pickled eggs, and you know I always encourage you to use your Instant Pot because you have less, your eggs don't break. You know how half of the white comes away? No, not with Instant Pot steamed eggs. They come out beautifully whole with no nicks or cuts or any of those things. And I have eggs prepped for the week. They make an excellent snack, great on Cobb salads, whatever you want. If you're hungry or you need a good high protein snack, you've got some eggs. And there we are, an entire container of beautiful eggs. Now, let's run back over to the stove because the rice is cooking away nicely. Don't be tempted to open the lid, by the way. That is not necessary. If everything is going good and your liquid and your rice ratios are spot on, you don't need to check it. Let it do what it do. Now, the chicken is halfway done. I'm just going to flip it over. I prefer to cook my chicken the back side down, and then I flip it and cook it the rest of the way, the backside up. And just spoon a little sauce over the chicken. I did not feel comfortable putting that plain dry chicken back in there without, a little bit of sauce on the back to kind of, I don't know, it just felt weird not to baste it just a little bit. So by all means, baste your chicken if you're like me and you just couldn't bear to put it in there plain as it was. So the 20 minutes is up and the rice is done. Now this is another important step. Turn the heat off, remove the lid from the pot. And as you notice, there's no water. Now immediately wrap the lid of the pot in a clean tea towel. And then I did have a little bit of difficulty doing this because I was holding my phone with one hand, and filming with one hand and trying to do everything with the other hand. Fortunately, I am right-handed, so that makes things a little bit easier. But yes, put a towel on the pot, on the lid, and then take it off the stove. Please take it off the stove. Don't leave the towel on the hot stove. Remove it to a cool space, and then just let that sit. And you can let that sit for as long as you want. That step with the tea towel removes any excess moisture and will give you a nice fluffy rice. Now, moving on to the cake that started out pretty good, but ended in a little bit of a disaster. So this is a 1-bowl cake. It started its life in a very happy, pleasing way, like any cake. Some sugar. I used a little bit of canola oil. You can use melted butter, but to be perfectly honest, I was lazy, and I did not feel like melting butter. So I used oil. And an oil-based cake is usually more moister than a butter-based cake anyhow. Now, look at these eggs. Let's talk about them eggs. These are some of the biggest eggs I have to confess I've ever seen. Now, this is a normal large chicken egg. These are XXL chicken eggs. I was going to use 2, but then I began to realize 2 was way too many. And 1 egg for this cake was a plenty. And just to show you how massive this egg is, a typical chicken egg is 50 grams. this egg clocked in at 72 grams or a full third of a cup. That's a big egg. These eggs are laid by a special breed of hen. And actually they come from some friends of ours that raises chickens not too far from us, and we get eggs from them. But I have to confess, I looked at these, I said, these are the biggest eggs I think I've seen. They remind you a little bit of duck eggs. And I also, while I was rambling around, I found just a little smidge of leftover Biscoff cookie butter spread in the pantry. And I said, well, no use in throwing this away. So I did stir it into the cake batter. I mean, why not? It's kind of like adding in peanut butter or almond butter. This is just cookie butter. So this was not planned, by the way. But I figured, I'm meal prepping. And this is just for my family. They wouldn't mind, some random ingredients in a cake. But this was when I was happy about the cake. And then it quickly went into disaster mode. But anyway, we'll get to that. So just stir the cookie butter in. And as you can use peanut butter or you can leave it out entirely, which is what I was going to do. So you don't have to add that if you don't have it. Now I'm sifting in my dry ingredients, and you sift because if there's any lumps, the sifter removes the lumps and means there's less stirring. And as you can see, there is some lumps. So go ahead and give it a nice sift. The oven is preheated to 350 degrees. I'm adding in a bit of baking powder, and I'm going to add in a couple of fat pinches of salt. Now, this is pretty much a 1 cup cake, so you don't need much salt, but I guess if you wanted to measure this, you would use about 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. But 2 fat pinches is about 1/4 or 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Now, you may giggle and think, oh, Sarah, you are the precision baker, and I am, which is why I still have this on a scale. I am paying attention to the amount as I'm adding it in here. I maybe look like I'm randomly throwing ingredients in, but I'm not. I am actually measuring. And I forgot about the milk. The milk should have been added before the flour. So go ahead and add in the milk. However, I was running around in the kitchen doing other things while I was doing this. And that is what happens when you're multitasking. So I have sprayed a small 8-inch square cake tin with some baking spray. And into the oven the cake goes. And at this point, this is the happiest this cake is going to look. Okay, so more about that later. Now, about the rice. Remove the lid. This did sit for a considerable amount of time. It's still a little hot when I took the lid off. But as you can see, the rice is now fully steamed. And when you take a fork and you fluff it, every grain of rice is loose and separate. It's not clumpy. It's not sticky. It's not gummy. None of those things. It's perfectly done. It's perfectly fluffy. When you cook your rice this way, and it turns out this way, your rice actually stays fresher longer. Gummy rice does not last very long in terms of leftover rice. And as I say, I'm meal prepping. So I want enough rice to last for several meals. Rice is one of those things that you need to cook it. You actually need to practice it before you just say, okay. But that turned out very nicely. Now, here's the cake. Yes, it did overbake. It overbaked miserably. And it actually, to be perfectly honest, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It actually burned around the edges. Now, I could have left this out. I didn't. I was like, okay, Sarah, you can't do this. But this is honest, and I'm being honest. I did burn the cake. It happens. I hope it never happens to you, but it absolutely happened to me. I burnt the cake. But I wasn't going to throw it away because there was no need. We can eat it. We will eat it. So I can just hear my mother say, we will eat it. So these are peaches that I canned last summer from last summer's harvest of peaches. And I just went down cellar and got one of those jars of peaches. And I mean, look at the seal. Normally I can remove a lid, but that was really tight. Let you know, these are very well preserved. And I did have to take a jar lid opener in order to get that lid off. The reason why I was trying to avoid using that, it can bend the lid, and I like to reuse the lids for other things, not necessarily candy, but for other things, and you don't want the lids bent. But these are very nice and juicy peaches. I preserve these in a very light syrup. Light meaning about 2 to 3 tablespoons of sugar per 1 cup of water. Actually, honestly, it was more like 2 tablespoons of sugar for 1 cup of water. That gives you a very light syrup, but you can go a little heavier if you want sweeter peaches. I just took some of that peach juice and spooned it right over the cake. And of course, because it overbaked and burnt, it was a little bit dry. And then I spooned those lovely juicy peaches on top of the cake. So not only do you have the lovely peach juice soaking into the cake, you also get a nice amount of juicy, fresh peach with each slice of cake. And then just to make it look more decent and presentable, I did sprinkle on some powdered sugar. You can go as heavy or as light as you want. I don't want nothing to be too sweet, so I went slightly light. But, if your peaches are not very sweet, or if you prefer a little more sugar, and just sprinkle a little heavier. And yeah, that's the happiest face that I can put on for this cake. Oh no. But hey, it looks good if you don't look at the edges. And here is the meal prep for the week. There's the chicken, the rice, the cake, the lovely lamb, braised instant pot lamb, and of course the hard-boiled eggs. I hope you've enjoyed this video, fails and all, burnt cake and all. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and if you want to share your cooking fails with the rest of us, I'll be happy to hear. I'm not the only one who makes those disastrous mistakes in the kitchen. And good Lord willing, I will see you guys again in another video. Take care, y'all. Bye.